So, in case you couldn't read the title, because it's right down there below, um, this is me just talking about the movie Straight Outta Compton, the N.W.A. biopic, which, to begin with, the fact that I actually went to see it, not only while it was in theaters, which that in itself is rare, but on opening weekend. I mean, that's how you know that I was ready for this. And so the too long didn't read. The short answer for this, it's worth seeing. If you know the story, it's worth seeing. If you don't know the story, it's still what might even be more worth looking at. So if you don't feel like watching this entire video, because I don't know how long this is gonna be, I keep re-recording it because those who are not new to the channel know I have a tendency to ramble. And so there are times when I'm getting way too deep into my own shit and I'm trying to make it not about me but about the movie. But the main reason I watch the movie is because of stuff that happened in my life. And so it's hard to talk about the movie without talking about my life and how it all connects. But anyways, if you don't feel like watching the thing, I'm not going to say it's the best movie to come out ever. I'm not going to say it's the movie of the year. But I'm also not going to say that it doesn't deserve a nomination. All I can really say is that I rarely see a movie in theaters, because usually when I do, I feel like it's not worth it. Overpriced tickets to sit in an uncomfortable chair surrounded by total strangers eating overpriced food. I usually leave feeling like it's not worth it. I could have waited a year and just picked up the DVD, but I did not want to wait for this. I had to see it. And thankfully I had friends who were willing to pay for me, so hell yeah, I'm gonna see that. I mean, if I don't have to pay for the tickets, then I'll go see every movie. But anyways, so back to the movie is the first thing I'll say about it is that I did not feel anything. It didn't really stir up any strong emotional reactions to me. There was no real shock factor because I know the story. I know about these guys. I've listened to N.W.A. for years. I know about. I feel like everybody knows about Cube and Dre. I've known about Eazy-E and Ren and Yella. I know about all of the stuff that comes back to it. I've listened to basically the entire history of all rappers and hip hop, with Sugar Hill Gang and all these other. Way back in the day, all the early stuff, everything from then till now, basically. And so I know the story, I know what happened, and so for me there was no shock value, and so there were no tears, there was no oh my god, did that actually happen? There were definitely a few moments of yeah, go with it. But other than that, it was very, I don't know, mostly surreal kind of feeling just watching this all happen, watching it unfold. But that's my experience, having already knowing the entire story. I could almost equate it to oh yeah, I already read the books and then I watched the movie. That's just, I guess, kind of the feeling that I had going into it. But that doesn't take away from the power of it. I still think, even though it didn't necessarily move me, I still think it felt like it was a very moving story. And it was one that at times it was great and it was really fun, but there was also times when it got harder to sit through. And the first half, I have no complaints about the acting. I think the acting was superb. I really believe that these characters were real people. And the first half of the movie, it's a lot more fun and fast paced. It all happens very quickly, and I think in general the entire movie, there are times where it definitely feels rushed. But I get that it's covering a 10-year period, from '86 to '96, and there are the second half of the movie, it really feels like it slows down and there's a lot more going on, and it's shit. It's basically the first half of the movie is N.W.A. and the second half of the movie is the immediate aftermath of N.W.A. Because in case you didn't know already, N.W.A. didn't last for that long. They kind of broke up somewhere along the way. Oh, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! But anyways, yeah, so even though I knew the story and it didn't really give me feels, there's a reason I went to watch it anyways, to actually be able to see it unfold, to actually be able to hear the conversations, to see this all happening, to witness it, to feel like I got to be a part of it. Cause like for me, like this, even though I know the story, it's only because everybody else knows the story and was able to fill me in on what I missed. Because the story begins before I was even born, and that point in time where the movie ends, guess what I was doing that year? I was finishing kindergarten. So like I didn't really witness, like I didn't live it. So I was still very excited to be able to go back and actually see it unfolding, and it was awesome. It was really great. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding the movie, like with Yella and Rand. I think one of them, if not both of them, were complaining about how like they didn't get a lot of like promotional, like they didn't get a lot of promotion for the movie, which it's very much true. You don't really see them at all in the commercials and all the trailers and stuff. And in the movie itself, you barely see them at all. Like they're there, they rarely speak though. They don't really sing any of their verses in their songs for the most part, which kind of sucks because they can, they got talent, and it just. But yeah, I get why they're angry, but I also understand why it happened. They decided to focus the story on the big names, Dr. Dre, who changed the world, bringing Tupac and bringing in Snoop Dogg, going to Aftermath Records, bringing in Eminem. I mean, what he did, yeah, it's understandable why you would focus on the big names, why you would focus on Cube, why you would focus on Eazy-E and his story. It makes sense. It's kind of like when you think about NSYNC. The first thing that anyone talks about is Justin Timberlake because he had that huge solo career even after NSYNC went on. And then you think about JC because he's actually the most talented. He's a better singer than Justin. He's a better dancer than Justin. He's better looking than Justin. Come at me, bro. Or come at me, sis. Oh, bro, whatever. I said it. JC is hotter than Justin. I will stand by that. And then you think about Lance because, well, who doesn't want to think about Lance? That smile, though. Oh my God, so bright and shiny. I can't even believe it's real. And then you also think about, like, Joey and that other guy. And it's the same thing with basically any musical group. You focus on the big names first, the ones who did the most, the ones whose names are talked about the most. Those are the ones that you want to focus on because they're the money makers. And let's be completely honest here. If you had put Ren and Yella in the forefront and made like Ice Cube and Easy backup characters and made their story secondary, it wouldn't have pulled in as much money. That's just how it worked. Anyways, off of that topic, but I mean, it makes sense that the movie is getting a lot of criticism, that it gets controversies, since it's about, N.W.A, who were basically nothing but controversy during their entire existence. And, I had a lot of people coming out of the theaters questioning the realism of it, but, like, it felt so very real to me. And, like, because I grew up, I heard a lot of N.W.A. Fuck the Police is still an anthem throughout America today. And that's the saddest thing ever. You even heard it, Ice Cube talking about it in an interview he did. How it's 27 years later, so many of the things said in that song still turn out to be true. There are still so many policemen who think they have the authority to kill a minority. And many of them are not being held accountable. And it just sucks. I mean, and I'm so thankful because looking at what happened there, like my world is nowhere near as bad as that was, but it's still just so very fucking wrong that I live in a world where the police, the people who are supposed to be there to protect our individual liberties, the people who are supposed to be there to keep us safe, they're the ones who scare me the most. And that's just wrong, Oh, I see two gangs about to get in the street war. Who gives a fuck? Like, I'm gonna walk right through them, go pick up my Domino's pizza, walk back home. I gotta get my food. But anytime a cop car comes by, I tense up a little bit. And it's because I've had more bad experiences with cops than with anyone else in my lifetime. Like, even though I've never been arrested, mostly because I've never broken the law any other than jaywalking, which everyone does, like there have still been times where I've been stopped. Like I've had cops driving by me and they just slow down as soon as they get to me. I've had times where I could have sworn I saw the exact same car just circling the block, kept passing me by over and over again, just checking to make sure I was not doing anything. You know, I've had times where I've been stopped, I've been questioned, I've been frisked, I've had my bag searched. And it sucks that we live in a world where just walking down the street makes me a suspicious person. It makes no sense. You know, I've had a friend once where we were at work and he got off work and he came back 20 minutes later fucking pissed. Why? Because his bus only comes by once an hour and he was running to catch it because he saw it down the street, and so he was just running from one corner to the other, just one block away, and the cops stopped him and started questioning him, and he missed his bus and he had to wait and he had to just sit around waiting for the next one to show up. You know, and all he was trying to do was go home, but for some reason a black man running down the street in the middle of the night is automatically suspicious. Anyways, that's why, at least for me, I can somewhat connect to this because I understand what's going on here. There are a lot of people, like those people who question the realism of it, like does stuff like this really happen? Like, these are people who have never like had an issue with police in their lives. These are people who have never been part of that world and haven't had to see or deal with any of these issues. You know, these are people, you know, who have lived good lives where they never have to worry about any of this. But a lot of people aren't that lucky, and it's just too unfortunate that, you know, 20, 30 years later, we're still fighting for our right to just be us without the discrimination, and it's just, and it sucks. And in the N.W.A. and their music, it may be controversial. A lot of people hate "fuck the police," and you see that in the movie. You've got the federal government coming after them, telling them they can't play that song. But I mean, here's the thing I've always hated about like music when people try to blame it. I mean, two things. First of all, in the first place, no song has ever made somebody kill someone. If your kid is gonna pick up a gun and start shooting cops just because they heard someone say it in a song, guess what? Your kid had some fucking problems to begin with. There was already something so wrong with them if they're that susceptible, if they were that easy to sway. You didn't do your job as parents. And second of all, never once in their song did they ever say, "Hey kids all around the world, just pick up your guns and start shooting cops." No. The song is just about the fact that, hey, there are people in a position of power who are using that power to oppress us. They are abusing that power. And it still exists today. Thankfully, they are being held more accountable than they were previously, but it's still happening. A lot of people are being unjustly killed. And, you know, and it's just, it needs to stop. I want to see it stop in my lifetime. It shouldn't be happening. And, you know, that's why we're so drawn to the lyrics, because it's very true. And people want to sweep it under the rug because that's what you do when you have a problem that you either can't fix or don't want to fix. You just try to sweep it under the rug, pretend like it doesn't exist. And people are critical about them, but the truth is, they're just being honest. You know, they're not telling people to start fights. You know, they're just telling people like, hey, this is what life is like where we came from. That's all the song is. It's just them expressing their frustration with and all the problems that they've been having in their life. That's all it ever was. And it's just, you know, it's a very powerful message that unfortunately does still hold very true. And it's just, it's worth watching. It really is. It can be, like I said, at times it was difficult to sit through, but then there were also times which it was just so worth it, you know. And I just think, you know, to try. I talked about a lot of things in here, and a lot of the things, you know, it may not apply to you, but I think the movie overall is still just, it's worth checking out. You know, no matter what background you're from, I think it's worth just knowing the story. If you're not willing to sit in a library and actually look up their life stories, look at their histories, just sit down and listen to an actual N.W.A. album, then it's worth sitting through this 2-hour movie because it's very, very real. More so than I can say about most movies. I felt it was just an amazing storytelling. It's worth sitting through.